She slammed her SUV straight into Grandpa's Snowman and then jumped out screaming like I had destroyed her property. The snow was still sliding off her hood when she pointed at me and yelled, "You're paying for this damage! I'm calling the HOA right now." It stunned me for a second because we don't even have an HOA on our side of the road. But Karen never cared about details. She acted like the whole neighborhood was her kingdom. Grandpa came out with his cane, shocked, staring at the wrecked snowman he'd built with my little sister that morning. He whispered, "Why would she do that?" And that soft question hurt more than anything. Karen didn't even look at him. She kept shouting about community standards and unauthorized structures, as if a snowman on our lawn was some kind of crime. Then she leaned closer to me and said in this fake calm voice, "Move your grandfather inside. He's in trouble for violating winter decor rules." I felt my stomach twist. Because Grandpa hated conflict, and she knew that. She wanted him scared. She wanted power. But what she didn't know, what she could never imagine, was that Grandpa wasn't just some old man with shaky hands. He was the one who trained half the county's search and rescue team, including the real HOA president's son. And when Karen pulled out a clipboard with a fake violation notice, already filled out, my name, my address, even a fine amount, I saw Grandpa's jaw tighten in a way I hadn't seen in years. He stepped closer and said quietly, "Ma'am, you might want to think twice." She smirked like she'd already won. That was her mistake. She didn't just hit a snowman. She hit the wrong family. Karen didn't back down. She lifted that fake violation notice like it was some royal decree and tried taping it to Grandpa's chest. The nerve of her. Grandpa stepped back, but she kept moving forward, forcing him toward the porch. Snow crunched under her boots as she said, "This structure was illegal. Your grandson will pay for the damages to my SUV, and if you resist, I'll call my enforcement team." "Enforcement team?" I asked, even though I already felt something off. She smirked and hit a button on her phone like she was summoning soldiers. And that's when a black van rolled up. No logo, no plates, just tinted windows. Two men stepped out wearing badges that looked like they were printed on a home printer. Karen crossed her arms like she owned them. "These are HOA security," she said proudly. Grandpa leaned toward me and whispered, "They aren't even using the right badge." Shape. His voice had that sharp edge that only came out when something was seriously wrong. But the men didn't care. One looked at me and barked, "Step aside! Your snowman caused a road hazard. The HOA demands access to the property for inspection." Could feel the anger rising, but I held it back. Grandpa always taught me, don't fight stupid with anger, fight it with truth. Still, I kept my eyes on the men and said, "We're not under any HOA, step back." The taller one reached for my arm, and Grandpa, slow but steady, tapped his cane on the ground. A subtle signal, a warning, one I knew well. Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, the old man can barely walk. He's not stopping anybody." Her voice echoed across the yard, but she froze when a second vehicle pulled up. Behind the black van, this one with lights, hidden behind the grill. Unmarked, silent, but real. The door opened, and a familiar figure stepped out. The real HOA president's son, still in his county rescue jacket. His eyes locked on Grandpa first, then on the fake badges. His entire expression changed. "Sir," he said, turning to Grandpa, "do you want these people removed?" Karen's face drained of color, and Grandpa finally smiled. Her fake authority died the moment the real authority stepped out of that truck. The security guys froze when they saw the rescue jacket, but Karen tried to bluff through it like always. "Perfect timing," she snapped. "They destroyed my SUV with an illegal snow structure. I need full enforcement support." She said it loud, like volume could erase the stupidity of her lie. The HOA president's son, Evan, didn't even blink. He walked right past her like she was invisible and helped. Grandpa down the porch steps. "Sir, I heard she's been bothering you again," he said gently. Grandpa nodded, and the look they exchanged told me everything. This wasn't the first time Karen had tried something, and Evan was already tired of it. Karen stomped forward. "Excuse me, I'm talking! You need to deal with my damages! She jabbed a finger at me, is responsible for the snowman that caused my crash." I muttered under my breath, "You drove onto our lawn." but she kept shouting. Evan finally turned toward her. His voice stayed calm, but it carried weight. "This property is not under your HOA. These men," he said, pointing at the fake officers, "are trespassing." "And that badge?" He plucked it right off the tall guy's jacket. "This is printed on glossy brochure paper." The man tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. Karen's smile cracked. They're contractors, licensed. I hired them for neighborhood protection." "Then why are they impersonating officers?" Evan asked. Suddenly, one of the men made a run for the van, but he slipped on a patch of ice and crashed shoulder first into the door. Karen gasped like she was surprised they weren't professionals. Evan stepped between us and them, calling in something quietly on his radio. Grandpa leaned toward Karen, voice soft but sharp. "You really should stop before this gets worse." She crossed her arms tightly. "I'm the only one trying to keep this neighborhood safe." I stepped forward, unable to hold it anymore. "You crashed into a snowman. And now you're blaming us because you embarrassed yourself." She glared at me, but her voice trembled. The first crack in her confidence. Then Evan's radio crackled, and he said, "They're on their way." Karen blinked. "Who's on their way?" Evan didn't answer. He just stared at her with the calm you only see in trained rescuers, or someone who already knows how this ends. Karen took one step back, then another, and that's when Grandpa whispered, almost like a warning drifting through the cold air, "They're coming." And not for us. She wasn't scared of us. She was scared of whoever Evan had just called. Karen tried to play, confident again, but her eyes kept darting toward the road like she was waiting for some miracle to save her. The fake security guys stood stiff, trapped between running and pretending they still had authority. Snow kept drifting down, quiet, slow, almost peaceful, except for the tension tightening the air. Then we heard the sound, 2 slow siren chirps. Not loud, not dramatic. The kind cops use when they don't want the whole neighborhood running outside. Karen's face dropped. A real county sheriff SUV rolled up beside the curb, and 2 deputies stepped out. They weren't smiling. They weren't confused. They looked like they already had someone's name written on a clipboard. And it wasn't ours. Karen whispered, "No, no, no, no," under her breath and tried to casually step behind her fake security, as if she wasn't the one who brought them. The deputies walked straight to Evan. "These the impersonators?" one asked. Evan nodded. "Caught them flashing fake badges. Trespassing on private property." The taller fake officer pointed at Karen in pure betrayal. "She hired us. She said she was HOA president." "We didn't know." Karen spun around. "Lies. I hired them for snow inspection. He's twisting it." She jabbed a shaky finger at Evan. The deputy didn't even entertain it. "Ma'am, step forward." Instead, she panicked and did the most Karen thing possible. She backed up toward her SUV like she planned to escape, but forgot she had driven half the thing onto our yard. When she jumped into the driver's seat, the real cop shouted, "Do not start that vehicle!" She turned the key anyway. The engine screamed. Then smoke puffed out the front where the snowman had been packed into the grill. She tried reversing, only for the tires to dig deeper into the soft snow. Her back wheels spun, spraying slush everywhere, mostly on her fake officers. Grandpa sighed like he'd seen this level of stupid too many times. The deputies moved fast, opened her door, and pulled her out gently but firmly. She didn't scream this time. She just kept saying, "It's just a snowman. It's just a snowman," like she couldn't believe this was happening. While the deputies detained the fake officers, one of them looked at Grandpa and said, "We'll need your statement, sir." Grandpa nodded and rested his hand on my shoulder. His voice stayed steady. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere." Karen, shaking, stared at him with wide eyes, like she finally realized the one thing she never expected. Grandpa wasn't scared of her. He never was. And she still didn't know why. Her SUV wasn't the only thing. Stuck. Her lies were sinking even faster. Karen's face had turned the exact color of melted snow as the deputies read her rights. She opened her mouth, ready to scream about misunderstandings and HOA authority, but the words came out weak, almost breathless. The fake officers were being led to separate vehicles, mumbling excuses and apologies, leaving her standing alone like a puppet with the strings cut. I stepped closer, feeling the chill of the snow under my boots, and said, You didn't just crash a snowman, Karen. You crashed your credibility. Her hands trembled on her hips. I, she stammered. But Grandpa put a hand on my shoulder, signaling calm. Then came the twist nobody expected. Grandpa reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old video camera. He smiled faintly at me and whispered, "Let's show her what she really did." I looked at him puzzled, and he pressed play. On the small screen, there was footage of Karen speeding down the road, laughing, clearly distracted by her phone, before she swerved into the snowman. And then, like a punchline, the camera captured her shouting at the fake officers, demanding justice for damage that was her fault. The deputies leaned over, watching the playback, their frowns deepening. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't, she tried, but the evidence spoke louder than her lies. One deputy shook his head. "Ma'am, this isn't a debate. You're facing charges for property damage, impersonating an officer and filing false complaints." Her eyes darted around, wild and panicked. She looked at the crushed snowman, the snow dripping from Grandpa's porch, and finally at the real HOA SUV parked nearby. Every part of her scheme had collapsed in less than 15 minutes. And just when I thought it was over, Grandpa leaned in close to her. Voice calm but cutting. "Next time, maybe think twice before hitting snowmen or old men trained in ways you can't even imagine." She swallowed hard, realizing he wasn't just old. He was a force she had underestimated, and the neighborhood had seen it all. She hit a snowman, but she got knocked out by the truth. Karen sat on the curb, her hands still trembling, staring at her mangled SUV. She couldn't even form coherent words anymore. The snowman, now flattened and dripping, seemed to stare back at her like a silent witness. Grandpa hobbled over, cane tapping rhythmically on the ice, and nodded toward the mess. "It's a shame you couldn't see the damage you caused," he said softly. But every word carried weight. I stepped closer, curiosity burning inside me. "So, what now?" I asked. The deputies were organizing the fake officers, making sure they couldn't repeat this stunt elsewhere. Evan had pulled out his phone and was already calling the HOA board to report the incident. Karen's panic was palpable. She realized she had no backup, no witnesses, and no way to explain her actions without incriminating herself further. Then came the second twist. Karen's phone rang. She picked it up quickly, whispering frantically, "Yes! No, I told them it was fine." Her voice cracked. We couldn't hear the other side, but the fear in her eyes said it all. She wasn't only in trouble with us now, someone higher up was involved, and they were not happy. Grandpa shook his head. "I told you. Shortcuts never work. Karen, you can't cheat the system and expect to get away with it." His gaze shifted toward me, a small grin appearing. Lucky for us, she underestimated the wrong family. Karen dropped her phone and tried to sprint back to her SUV, hoping maybe she could escape before the towing company arrived. But her wheels spun uselessly in the snow. Each second she struggled. It became more obvious she had trapped herself entirely. Evan chuckled softly. "Funny thing about karma. It works faster than snow melts." The deputies finally stepped in, guiding Karen into their vehicle. She screamed about injustice, about her rights, but nobody listened. She had built her own prison out of lies, entitlement, and a snowman. As the SUV was towed away, Grandpa looked down at the flattened snow. He shook his head, whispering to me, "They never learn. Not until the evidence hits them in the face." Her entitlement didn't just crash, it froze in the snow. The neighborhood was quiet again, snow settling softly over the chaos Karen had left behind. Grandpa straightened, brushing snow off his coat, and looked at me. "Sometimes," he said, "people like that don't understand respect until they hit a wall. Or a snowman." I laughed, but it was more relief than humor. The tension had finally lifted. Evan gave a nod toward us, holding the last piece of evidence. Karen's fake badges. Her phone with all her lies and the security footage. "All of this will be documented. HOA board, police, and your insurance company will have everything," he said. "You don't need to lift a finger." Karen was being led away in the deputy's car, sulking, embarrassed, and utterly powerless. Every neighbor who had peeked out of their windows watched silently, realizing just how far her fake authority had stretched and how completely it had collapsed. Grandpa knelt and began rebuilding the snowman with my sister. I grabbed fresh snow, helping him sculpt the head. It felt like more than just fixing a decoration. It was reclaiming our space, our peace, our pride. The sun peeked out, reflecting off the snow, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. As we worked, Grandpa leaned closer and whispered, "Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. But it hits harder than any SUV." I realized then that this wasn't just about a snowman. It was about respect, family, and never letting entitlement run unchecked. Even as Karen's SUV disappeared in the tow truck, leaving tire tracks across the frozen yard, the neighborhood felt the message loud and clear. Power without truth collapses, and real strength comes from standing for what's yours. Honestly, calmly, and without fear. She tried to own the street, but all she owned was her mistakes. The snowman stood tall again, stronger than before. And for the first time that day, we all felt safe on our own land.